Danny Smith, here we sit in the Field of Dreams in Indiana.
This is the Field of Dreams. I lived in Indiana most of my life, and I've heard about the place, but first time I was here was last year when we were all here, and it's just amazing.
When I drive past the sign that says Danville, I get all excited, but it's Danville, Illinois that I go past. So.
Yeah, it's about an hour from Danville, Indiana.
Okay.
We're just west of Indianapolis, about 10 miles. For most of my life there, I lived there. Yeah.
So Connor Woods called you Danville Dan. That was his, that was a thing. Obviously, that we were talking before about how drivers have given small towns a worldwide footprint. Holmesville, Ohio, Apple Creek, Worcester.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? New Oxford, Pennsylvania, Danville, Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana. Has Danville been good to you over the years?
Yeah. Graduated high school in 1975. My dad's speed shop was on the west side of Indy. We moved to Liston, Indiana, which is 4 miles from Danville. Met my first wife there, ended up in Danville and stayed there till 2008-ish. And ended up in Ohio. I'm a transplant now.
Yeah. Always an Indiana boy though, right?
Yeah, Indiana's home.
Are you in Facebook jail at the moment? Did I read that?
Oh, I was.
You get yourself in trouble?
Some picture from 6-8 years ago or something stupid. It was a picture of well, I found very amusing. It was a picture of about 10 or 12-year-olds, a school picture. They're all dressed up in their ties and their little go to school clothes. And the one in the back row was turned around backwards with his pants hanging down, mooning everybody. And they found that offensive.
Huh.
I found it funny, but
yeah.
Anywho, so we were in jail.
Was it you in the picture? Maybe that's why.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
How is life these days, mate?
Life is really good. Married Steph, 2008.
Yep.
Life's been really good since I moved to Ohio. Plenty of racing there for me. Since the older I got, the more I was primarily wing racing.
Yep.
Wasn't a lot of wing racing. Still not a lot in Indiana. So, besides marrying Steph, which is one of the best things I've done in my life, moving to her hometown of Chillicothe. She's got a lot of family there. She has a really good job there. So it just made sense for me to move to her place with all that going on. And she made the fatal mistake of saying, you keep your race car going and I'll keep the house going. That was a deal. Well,
but it took a while for you to make that decision.
Here we are 15 years later and she's keeping the race car going and the house going. It's done real good.
I remember meeting her, I think, in Kalgoorlie.
Yep.
What a place. It was hot as Hades. Remember, we were trying to sit by what was a pool there somewhere. And so, you took it to one of the real high points of the world, going to Hay Street, Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool trip. That was her first time there. We got to drive across Nullarbor in the World Series truck. And she got to see, I guess that's not considered the Outback, but it's way out there. So
it's close enough.
It's close enough. So, yeah, she's got to go a couple times. And Australia racing has been a big part of my career, and I'm glad she got to see some of it.
You've given so much to our sport, Danny, down there. I remember at the time, we did that World Series Sprint Cars dinner you came along to when you raced with us, and I'm pretty sure I think you finished up with Reeve that time when you said one door closed, another Titan garage door opens.
Right.
But I think out of anyone, I wanted you to run the Australian Sprint Car title. I think that you earned that right to be able to do that. Was that something, looking back on it, that you wish could have happened?
Oh yeah, definitely. We did show up at Warrnambool one year. It said you had to be a resident of Australia to race. Well, I took my passport, and I had a special visa to race, and I was a temporary resident.
Yep.
But Winterbottom, he said he interpreted it to be a permanent full-time resident. So I did get to run. We tried. But
so you had to go?
Yeah, didn't go. We were there, car unloaded, ready to go, and it didn't fly.
When this kid grew up in Danville, Indiana, and obviously, your dad was a massive part of your racing heritage and your DNA, did you ever dream, did that kid ever dream that you're going to race on the other side of the world? Not just once, but it became a second home for you, Australia. We regard you as one of us.
No. Didn't even know they raced in Australia when I was a young racer. And then, of course, reading the Speed Sport News, reading articles about this and that. Got the opportunity through Gambler Chassis coming in. It's one of the best moves I made to go do that. Because, yes, it did come a second home. A lot of friends that I consider family. And a good place to spend our winter, your summer.
Yeah.
And get to do what you love year-round when you go over there.
How many years did you come?
I know I went for 21 in a row. And then, so it's probably 27, 28 times total. Sometimes twice in a year.
Yep.
Sometimes I'd fly home for Christmas break and then fly back. But I remember the first year going, we was there for 3 months and ran 16 races. Because races were once a weekend.
Yeah.
And you had to drive hours and hours and hours to do that. Whereas now they've picked up the pace and you can get a couple in a weekend here and there.
Are the classic wins the sweetest, or are there other events that, World Series events or, other events that you rank right up there?
They're all special. I got a bunch of them at Parramatta.
Yeah.
Probably 30-ish wins there maybe. But the 6 classic wins are it, because the Grand Annual Sprint Car Classic is the Knoxville Nationals of Australia.
Yeah.
So it's very, very honored to win that 6 times.
In a lot of ways, you won the Australian Sprint Car title six times, because the Classic had every bit of the toughness that the Australian title had, and it had Americans.
And usually the title was, especially down Warrnambool, Melbourne way, the title was the week before or the week after the Classic. So you had the best of the best were already there to run the Classic from Australia, plus the best of the Americans. So, when you won that Classic, you beat the best.
What advice did you give in the early days when you were starting to go there and you'd been there half a dozen times? What advice did you give Americans? Because I imagine that was before the internet. Oh, what's it like down there?
Yeah.
What sort of things would you tell people?
Well, I'd tell them Australia racing and the way they live down there is exactly the same as we do it, but a heck of a lot different.
Yep. Exactly the same, but a heck of a lot different.
Yeah, they're got the same things, but they call it different things. You drive cars, but it's on the other side of the road.
Yep.
If down there, if you get a torch, that's a flashlight.
Yes.
If you get a torch, it's a Aussies.
Yes.
So, I never had anything bad to say about Australia. The people and everybody's treated me right. So the first 3 years when I was young and naive and thought I knew it all, and I was like, I have a clue what they're doing over here racing wise. Why do you run 2 heats? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And then, about 6 years into that, I realized that's how they do it. That's how they've always done it.
Yeah.
And they probably think the same way when they come here and run our racing program. Why don't they run 2 heats? So.
Well, I think we've always been a bit more fan focused in Australia, I feel. Not that you guys aren't, but that we had less people to draw from, so we had to work harder, I think, to make it that way. And the 2 heat thing was always better for the fan, not necessarily better for the driver, right?
Right. Yeah, I finally, after a few years, I understood all that.
You drove for a lot of...
Plus, when it started, there wasn't 60 cars like you have nowadays down there. It's 15, 18 cars.
Yeah.
And 2 heats would be 4 total, usually, or 6.
Yeah.
And some of our tracks here run 4, 5, 6 classes. We're down there maybe had 2.
Yeah.
So that way it didn't make but the nights really got done at the same time with 4 heat races or 6 versus 2.
You had some phenomenal rivalries with Aussies. Most people probably talk about the rush battles in particular, because Gary was certainly at the top of his game when you were at the top of your game down there.
Yeah.
But, and it's not fair to mention people because then you forget, but George Tatnall, Steve Brazier, Nipper Lacey, that sort of era as well. Massively, the gods of the sport were around in our time when you were racing down there.
Yeah, I got to race with all the greats of that time. Bob Blacklaw. There's a name that you don't hear much anymore.
Yeah, what a guy.
Because he wasn't a Gary Rush type hero.
Yes.
But he was one of my heroes. So.
And he was a master blaster around Parramatta. He was good around Parramatta.
Yeah. And he was low budget, but sure had a good time.
Yeah. The car owners you drove for, there's a lot of them. I think a lot of people remember the Lander Toyota car in particular with Dennis Farr, the Farr family, and David Lander supporting it. You had a lot of success in that car, didn't you?
That was the most fun team that we raced with because Colin and Robbie were young, growing up, working on the cars, learning, teaching them a little bit. You really can't tell anybody how to drive a race car, but you can give some hints. It's kind of up to them. But I was with that team at the time. It was growing up to where the kids took over. So the most fun was driving for him. Then I got to drive for some pretty good-sized teams over there.
Bill Barrows always comes to mind, driving his gorgeous 6 car, and what an amazing family. And he still works his ass off at Borderline Speedway. Very hands-on. What a guy.
He's flat out 24/7 ever since I've known him. And if you need something, if he doesn't have it, he'll make it. Or if he can't make it, he'll find it. He's always been one of those guys to give you his shirt off his back, so to say.
We went to Lismore one night, Danny, and we got rained out on the Wednesday, and we ended up in the Irish pub with Adam Brand and Max and all those guys. And
I was thinking that the other day.
We were out with the shopping trolley. Now, who was in the shopping trolley? Do you remember? It was like Willie.
I can't remember his name, but he helped from down at Warrnambool.
Wasn't it like Willie Kane or Willie Croft or someone like that? He was working for Bill Mann. He was helping Bill Mann on the car. I think Shane Stewart was driving for him. But we come up on we're all walking around the streets late at night. Adam Brand had a song called Nah, I Don't Think So.
Yeah.
He was in the shopping trolley. Were you pushing the shopping trolley or were you standing on the curb?
Well, actually, we closed that pub down.
Yes, we did.
And that was the first mistake. And, I really don't know where the shopping trolley came from.
I remember,
but
yes.
It ended up in my hands.
So you were powering it.
And we were on a big hill, and I thought the guy helped the 88 car from down to Warrnambool.
Okay, you think the V88?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. I thought he was helping on Bill Mann's car because we had to call Bill and tell him that his crew guy got...
Maybe it was. Anyway, somehow he ended up in the golf cart, and somehow he ended up going down the big hill, going pretty fast, and his bad decision was
jumping out.
And we could hear the snap from half a mile away. So, yeah, I was part of that.
He was laying there, and someone said, get him up, and Max sang Adam's song, Nah, I don't think so.
It was bad. So, yeah, he's got titanium rods and screws. Something to remember that from forever.
Yeah, remember Lismore?
Yeah.
The Harrower brothers, the 88 car as well. I mean, there's so many people that you drove for over the years. Reeve Kruk threw your lifeline. At the time, you drove for Robin Dawkins. Yep. I vividly remember you telling me that Robin ain't happy unless he ain't happy.
That's right. He fired me, and I told his helper, I said, hurry up and get that seat out before he changes his mind. It was just bad luck. Got frustration level way up for him, and we had the best night we had that burned every tire in the truck off that night. And he just had enough, so told me to find something else to drive, so I did, and before it was all said and done, he called me back, wanted to know if I would run his car at the Classic, and I already committed with Reeves. So.
Yeah.
But a lot of good car owners, not many bad ones over there that I drove for. There wasn't a bad one. Some knowing the difference, with some was a little more financially better shape than others, but they all had the same desire to go race.
What are the fans like comparatively? Is there a difference between Aussie fans and American fans?
Well, I went right after the time of Patterson and those type of guys that really got them stirred up. I wasn't into doing that.
Yeah.
I kind of give in and started, you know, the first night I think we raced, the first night was Adelaide. And they introduced me and they're all booing me. Well, they'd never seen me race.
Yeah.
There was no internet. They never heard of me. But then I found out that's, you know, it's just a rivalry of USA versus Australia. So I started hamming it up a little bit with them. So, but no, fans are fans. They're interested. Some are interested in the car. Some are interested in your life. Some are interested in this and that. Everybody's got something they want to know. And it seems like here in America, especially the tracks I've been racing at the last few years, we are the first feature usually, and we get loaded up and leave, and they're still racing. So I don't get to see the fans very much around some of the tracks we run at. Where Australia, usually the big race was the last one, and I think I've signed more autographs at the classic weekends than I have in my entire life. So very enthusiastic. They love to hate you, and it was just a lot of fun.
I love it when fans are sometimes drivers too. Matthew Reed, what a beautiful thing he did for you with that tribute car. That must be something I think that you'll take forever.
Oh yeah, it caught me way off guard. I had no idea what was going on there. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what. And when they unveiled that car at the
Fan appreciation,
luncheon,
I think it was.
Just floored me. So I ended up with the body panels, and they're all out at Knoxville right now. So
yeah, I saw the wings in the high V at Knoxville.
Yeah, I want to get those back and put that car back together.
Yeah,
and I've got a frame to do that. And I haven't been to Knoxville since I quit running half miles, which was 2016-ish. And I decided that I run some series that race on that weekend in the past. So I decided next year I'm going to Knoxville one way or another as a spectator or as a owner.
So let's talk about that, because we talked about that exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
It would be super cool if somebody was to come in and want to lease that car with you.
Yep.
Right? That would be the way it would work, to drive the iconic 4 car.
Right.
I'm going to guess the colour scheme. I'm going to just put it out there. It might have a bit of what that has on it. Might have a little bit of that colour.
Maybe that.
Maybe even that. But you would be open to that, right? We talked about this and we never followed it up. I never followed it up.
Yeah. The reason I didn't follow it up, I decided to run the Ohio Valley Sprint Car Association, a small series around home.
Yep.
And they raced that weekend on Knoxville, so kind of just let it go after that. But I've been thinking I want to go back to Knoxville. It's been almost 10 years, 8 years.
Wow.
And I was there every year from my first year, 1978, until 2016. And I raced there every year. A couple of years I was injured, didn't get to race, but I was still there.
Yeah.
And man, I miss it.
Well, look at what Jason saw.
I don't really miss the racing or miss that, because I miss all the people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look what Jason Sides does, right? He has young kids that come in and lease his experience. Mm-hmm. They're not just getting a sprint car; they're getting 30 years on the road. So if someone was to call you up and say, "Hey, I'm serious. I want to run the 4 car with you at the helm of that," that's a possibility.
That is a big possibility.
Okay, we need to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make a decision where you race and what you race anymore, Danny? Like, you must have a budget in your mind when you go somewhere. Do you have a plan? I've got to finish in this position to make sure I, make this financial, or?
Yeah, the last 2 years I run the Ohio Valley Series, and those races are all within an hour and a half, 3 hours at the most from home. Any other race where we can have the most fun and do the best. If there's a World Outlaw race and maybe not a big car count, and they pay good enough to just get in the show is good, might do that, but pretty much it's where we can have the most fun, and I don't have any budget. What I made last week is what I got to work on this week, so where we can have the most fun and do the best and be the easiest on our equipment.
How about t-shirts and things like that? You still get, who's that guy that just walks through the shot, and that guy, Steve Kinzer just photobombed you.
T-shirts.
Yeah.
Where I've been running the last 3 seasons was Ohio Valley Series for this year and last, and the 360 Series USCS the year before, which we won that series, which is a 50 to 60 race series.
Yeah.
But they're all down south. They're all mostly stock car tracks.
Yeah.
And don't sell a lot of shirts.
How many years in the game now? 51?
This would have been my 51st season, I believe.
We need to come up with some kind of a cool looking, you know.
I've been lucky enough to win 49 of those years. At least one.
Lucky enough. Is that what you call it?
Well, yeah. You start out the year this year really good, winning, won a race and run good, and then the rain set in Ohio, which is in a drought.
Yeah.
We've been rained out 15 times in the middle of a drought.
Is the win still that exciting? Is it still like, hell yes?
Yeah, it is. That's why you do it. It's a win.
But can you still enjoy the simple pleasure of when the car just sits down in the corner and you go, oh, this thing's perfect right now?
Yeah. If once you lose that feeling and the will to win, then you're just riding around. So that ain't much fun. And there's been some races I rode around because I wasn't that good. And before I'd ride around and try to make it up and end up out in the parking lot. I don't do that now. Sometimes if it's not a point race, if I'm not running up in the money, I'll pull it in and save my engine a half a night. You do that 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. That's a couple more nights you got on your motor later on down the road. So if it's good, gas it. If it's not, take what you got and get out.
I would imagine there's a lot of grumpy old truck drivers on the highway. They've been on the road for 40 years, looking at some of these kids weaving in and out of traffic and going, what the... It's got to be like that a bit for you on the racetrack at times.
Yeah. There's not much respect for... I mean, there's respect with the guys you normally race with. But some of them kids just never had to fix something they broke or buy something they broke. So it's a different world we live in now. I fix all my stuff until it's nothing left. And young kids now with rich dads just go buy a new one. So that's just the way it is nowadays.
PhD. Parents have dough.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do if you don't do this? You always told me that you're too honest to steal.
Too lazy to work.
I wasn't going to say that bit. I was just using the bit about
I don't know. As long as I enjoy it, keep having fun. The only reason I've been racing this long is, and it's not by choice, it's just the way it happened, I had no kids. Had no kids to look after. None to start a racing career with. No kids equals no grandkids. So to either be a Walmart greeter or go race, and a hell of a lot more fun to race.
Danny Lasowski earns quite a good living these days as a mentor for 2 or 3 teams on race night at times.
Yeah.
Is that something you could be down the road? People could hire Danny Smith? Because the experience that you have in just getting a good baseline set up and teaching a kid how to run properly, that's priceless, mate.
Possibly. I've had some offers to go do this and that. Had some offers to go work at a racetrack. And honestly, for racing for 51 years, I'm tired of working on race cars.
Yeah.
And
No, you just tell a kid this is what you do.
Surely don't want to work at a racetrack. I don't know if I'm ready to go just mentor a kid or not. Yeah, it's always in the back of my mind, but
It'd be a waste if you didn't. If someone paid you good money to do it, mate.
Yeah. It'd have to be really good money.
It's like a 50-year-old bottle of scotch, mate, compared to,
Very selfish. Race car drivers that race all the time, full time, all over the world and country. It's very selfish. I mean, missing family this, family that. I missed my grandparents' funerals, but they followed me all over the country. Well, dang it, they died on a race weekend. They know. They want me to go race, but it's still hard to do that. I did get to go to walk my sister. I missed one race for a wedding, and I walked the youngest Smith girl down the aisle in honor of my dad, and that was big. I had to do that.
Yeah.
And that was really special. So, but missing this and missing that and missing everything you stick around home and get rained out on weekend. I went down the main street in Chillicothe on a Saturday about 4 o'clock. Like, where do all these people come from? It's crowded. My wife said, well, that's that way every day down here. I said, oh, okay. So usually I'm on the road somewhere and we get rained out, go straight home and park it on the couch and watch a race on TV now. That's really bad. Flow racing and
yeah, dirt vision and all that
dirt
stuff.
vision.
Yeah.
Well, that makes you a fantastic race fan. You watch 5 or 6 features if they line up right in one night, and if you miss them, you just go to the replay. So
It means you can drive those things when you watch, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
how people learn.
Yeah, that's how I learned. My dad had a speed shop. I knew all the guys. I knew I was going to race from a little kid. Where I learned to race was Paragon Speedway. Turn 1 was built on the side of the hill.
Yeah.
So it was about 4 feet from the infield to the bottom of 1 and 2. You could stand on that hill and watch. It was all non-wing stuff back then in the 60s, very early 70s. You could stand up 4 or 5 feet and watch every move the guy makes from the steering wheel.
Wow.
Listen to the throttle. I had it pretty much figured out before I ever got in one. Until I got in one, you know. But
I'm pretty sure Steve won his first ever race at Paragon.
might have.
I think that's what Carl told me. Wow.
My dad about got Steve fired in 77. Steve was just starting there and been winning everything, and it was a 50 lapper at Bloomington. Steve's running on the top, letting it all hang out, and my dad's putting the bottom in a Diz Wilson sprint car, which is a Hall of Famer, Diz Wilson. And putting the bottom and coming off 4th with the checker, driven by Steve in one race. That about got him fired from his ride. You have to ask Steve about that.
You got an evil twinkle in your eye when you said that.
Yeah. And the story, when I fired Steve, I had a ride, and make a long story short, I had a ride that didn't show up. Steve had my car, he showed up. Sorry, buddy. My car didn't show up. I need the ride. Well, we talked about all these stories at Knoxville during a chit-chat in the church, I believe.
Yeah.
And when we was all telling these stories, Steve said, well, I got Carl's ride, so it worked out pretty well.
I think
and if you know the story, it was between me and Steve when Carl was hired. Carl told me he wanted to hire a young driver so he could learn him something. That's his exact words.
Yep.
And he did that.
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Good.
It worked out okay.
Yeah, it worked out okay for me too.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I mean, here we are. You're still doing this after all these years. We're sitting here inside Ray Skillman's, hanging out with all your buddies still, and life is to be cherished, Danny.
Very good. Got my 2 years ago, I had cancer on my kidney. Thursday, I went and got it scanned. No reoccurrence. Life is good. The biggest problem I got nowadays is getting in and out of my race car. The bones hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
But
your dad would be proud, mate, to think what you've gone on to achieve in your life.
Oh, yeah, I had a proud dad. Yeah. He's a big hit in Warrnambool. He's more famous in the city of Warrnambool than I was. But, yeah, that's where it all started. My dad was a racer, and I watched him and learned from him, and he's been gone now for 20 years.
Wow.
21 years.
Wow.
And everything I know originated racing-wise with him.
That's why we got to get someone to drive that 4-car one day. We need to work on Knoxville for next year, right? Deal?
Yep. We'll do something.
All right. I'm going to make it happen.
Okay.
It's good to see you, mate.
All right, man.
Look at these, all these classics and this classic right here. 6 times, thank you very much.
My old classic Bubby Jones shirt on.
You just got it rocking on, mate.